All right, what's going on, everybody? Tobin here with you. Thanks for checking us on out. Much appreciated. Subscribe to the channel. Check us on out. The Tobin and Leroy Show streaming on YouTube and Twitch weekdays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Would appreciate if you guys go subscribe over there. Many of you are joining us. Many of you can interact live with us, get in on the chat, give your thoughts, all that stuff. So do that. Get on over there and join the fun. But I appreciate you guys checking us on out over here. The Miami Heat, who are playing a lot better right now. I mean, that has been an encouraging thing overall. Let's not forget, as Pat Riley says, let's keep the main thing the main thing. But trade fodder is about. It is all over the place. And there was a report yesterday from Sean Devaney of The Heavy, and he was reporting on the Miami Heat apparently have had trade talks with the Atlanta Hawks surrounding John Collins. And he said, this was the article. It says, with the NBA trade deadline looming on February 9th, the Heat are, quote, as active as anybody, according to league sources, with Miami not only looking to upgrade the front court, but anywhere else on the roster, too. Power forward is the most obvious target, losing P.J. Tucker and starting Caleb Martin. Martin has played well, but there is concern about the team's lack of size. Thus, Yahoo's Jake Fisher reported that the Heat have interest in Timberwolves point guard D'Angelo Russell, which have been all over the place as far as like, hey, is it true? Is it not true? There's been a lot of that. There's been a lot of that talk about D'Angelo Russell for Kyle Lowry. I don't know if I buy it. Seems like one of those things that just started as a thing and became like really obvious, and then it's just like all over the place. But anyway, I think most Heat fans are going to dig this. But it says, but bolstering the front court is still Miami's priority. They have had discussions with Atlanta about John Collins that have since gone dormant, a deal that would potentially send Duncan Robinson and Caleb Martin to the Hawks and perhaps a protected draft pick. Those talks could be rekindled, but there is concern among some with the Heat that Collins and star big man Bam Adebayo would not be a great fit. And then he also throws in the Heat have a standing offer for Jay Crowder. So appreciate Sean for the nuggets there that are going on there. The John Collins thing is the most interesting thing, I think, because the Jay Crowder thing, like, if it happens, it happens. Like, I'm going to be like, cool, Jay Crowder's here. And I think Jay Crowder's going to dig being down here. And I know Jimmy likes Jay Crowder. And I think Jay Crowder can help you win. I don't know if it's like the trade deadline piece that anybody's going to think is going to make you a contender. Jay Crowder was kind of like, I remember when Jay Crowder came here, everybody was kind of more excited. Oh, we're getting Andre Iguodala. And Jay Crowder's the one who became the starter. Now, Andre still had a couple of big moments in the postseason and was a big influence on that locker room. But Jay definitely played the more significant on-court role for that team. Either way, to John, a couple things are interesting here. One, John Collins. First of all, that's basically a hometown guy. Played up the road from me over here in West Palm Beach at Cardinal Newman. And so he's a South Florida guy who would be coming back down here. Has had a bit of unrest, I would say, with his time with the Hawks because, he is a very talented offensive player. At one point, a couple of seasons ago, when he was 22, he averaged 22 points a game. Has been in that realm of like 17 and a half points with 7 rebounds. Like the production has gone down from his peak season, but, has been kind of looked upon mostly as like the other big offensive option on a very talented Hawks team that has Trae Young, who obviously gets the bulk of the offensive load there and takes as many shots as he wants. And there's been many documented things that Trae is like not the most pleasant guy to play with, not the most pleasant guy to coach, can kind of be a pain in the ass, and that not everybody loves playing with him. And then there was thoughts that John Collins wanted to walk after his first contract, that he wanted to get the hell out of here. But, when people offer you a big fat deal, it's hard to say no. It's hard to say no to $125 million guaranteed. You will deal with it like the way of the NBA has become. You get the guarantee and then you deal with it later. You try and figure it out. So I'm interested from the standpoint of what what could the Heat do with a guy as talented as John Collins in their system? Like what would that look like? Because for the most part in his career, as far as fit next to Bam, he's been a really good shooter. For whatever reason this year, he's not. But he has typically been a guy who, is taking about a little over 3 attempts a game and has been shooting, 40%, last year 36%. So it's odd that he's kind of fallen off a cliff a little bit this year. His offense has gone way down this year. Now they did add DeJounte Murray. So you could sit there and say, like, hey, maybe that's part of the reason. And he's getting squeezed out even more. Instead of being the B to Trae Young's A, they've added another guy and said, you're more of a C minus. And so I will say, for that trade, that seems like, for me, I look at that trade and I'm like, all right. Because there were some reports out there that they were asking for like a Rudy Gobert haul for him initially, which I was like, that's kind of crazy. Like, just because people are stupid about Rudy Gobert doesn't feel like, you're just going to get the thing. But I do think with John, the fit next to Bam is an interesting one because he is going to come here, and I do feel like the perfect fit for Miami isn't necessarily a guy who's like, oh, he's a front court guy, but he's an offensive front court guy. And, it's not always like the prettiest in the world and all that stuff. So just drop him on in there and see how that works with Bam, who is having his best offensive season, is being super, is being super confident with how much he is taking shots, taking those matchups. So I get the concern there. I do. I do think that I understand if there are genuine concerns about that. I get it. Bam is been a hard puzzle for them to crack as far as like who's the perfect guy. PJ Tucker did it as good as anybody. He just had a problem with age by the end. Age and durability was the big issue with PJ, but he did it about as good as anybody. Is John Collins, could the Heat harness his shooting and say, hey, let's just light it up from the corner, dude. Light it up from three. Because they will take a guy. Jay Crowder, they even did this with. They will take a guy who who don't look upon somebody and say, hey, that guy is a knockdown shooter. Did this with Caleb Martin and say, just keep shooting. Like they will really take somebody with offensive talent and they will furnace that ability. They will try and breathe more confidence into you taking as many shots as possible. They don't want a guy coming here and being passive and being shy to shoot. It's why the big switch I think happened with Max and Duncan Robinson. Other than injury, obviously there's been other stuff this year, but one of the big things was, Duncan just felt very much like his confidence was shot and that he wasn't able to get to that point. And you look at Dunks and he were to go to a place like Atlanta where, they lose Kevin Huerter. They could certainly use somebody of his skill set, maybe to just kind of fit in there and light things up from the bench. I can see why they would want him. I can see why they would want a guy like Caleb Martin because Caleb was amazing against them in the playoffs. Shut Trae Young's ass down at certain times. He's a dog defender. He's on a cheap contract. I would say, though, like out of all the moves that intrigue me the most that have been out there, the Russells, the Jay Crowders, this is definitely the one that does intrigue me the most. I mean, I feel like Miami could take somebody of John's talent and find the best out of it. And so while I get why there would be some people in the team's concern, and again, they say that the talks are dead. So like, let's not act like this is on the 5-yard line of happening. It's just something they've kicked around. While I get the concerns, I think are legit things I would question about bringing John here. I also do trust his coaching staff, and I do trust their ability to get the best out of guys and really try and really get the most out of people's offensive talents. It's just a question too of like John's been on a team where, they haven't had the best defensive mindset. He has been in this box of wanting to be in a bigger role. And I don't necessarily know if he's going to be in a bigger role in Miami. He just may find himself in a lineup where people are more willing to share. Because I think that's the one thing, with playing like a guy like Jimmy Butler, who's the alpha here, instead of a guy like Trae Young, Jimmy almost would welcome somebody else coming to score. Maybe not at like the end of games, and maybe not maybe not, in the key moments, but regular season moments, certain spots in the playoffs when, he needs to go take out a really talented guy on the other end defensively, he'd certainly welcome that. But if you do look around, is he going to have this major role offensively, which is probably what he's looking for? I mean, you think about it, like Jimmy, Tyler, Bam, they're all scoring over 20. Victor Oladipo's come in and provided a lot. Kyle Lowry, we've had a lot of talks about him. It almost feels like he's been, kind of scrubbed out as far as like getting any offensive production from him. So it's not a place where if he comes in here, I don't know if he's going to have that big time role. And the other thing with him is he makes a lot of money. I mean, that's another thing that we got to put out there is like you're bringing in a John Collins who is owed basically another $100 million. And, is that something that the Heat want to put more of their cash into? What does this put them over the top? I do think that people would look at it and be like, whoa, they've just added somebody who at one point averaged over 20 points a game also, and does add a lot of punch. And I think that people would believe that the Heat could get a lot out of him. But I think the thing that you trust, if this move is made, if it does come back, you got to trust that the Heat coaching staff and Spo, they feel like they can get a lot more out of him than Atlanta did, which I think is something John would appreciate, because it feels like for the most part in his time in Atlanta, he feels like he's been kind of squeezed out of having the best role that he can be. Like Atlanta, everybody looks at Atlanta and they're like, oh man, look at all the talent around there. They have all these guys, and it's tough when you feel like you play with a guy in Trae Young and you're like, I don't know if this guy brings out the best in me. I'm not saying it's fair or not fair. I just think that that's based on the tea leaves, the narratives, the sources, all that stuff, the unrest that has been there in Atlanta. That's from the outside looking in what it appears like. And, if he comes to a place in Miami, maybe it's a little bit more harmonious and also is a place he's familiar with and has people that care about him down here. So that might be a thing where he enjoys the fit a lot more too, and maybe is more happy about the role that he plays here because it's a new place. He maybe feels like he's more part of a real contender or can be the final piece to a true contender. So that could also go a long way as well. But it's intriguing. It definitely was like, all right, that one intrigues me. It's a lot more than the D'Angelo Russell rumors or the Jay Crowder rumors. Like, it definitely was like, it makes you go, it's not whale sounds, all right, but it's more like, that's where it has me at.